right, welcome public relation professionals, dear educators and dear students. This is Universal Public Relation Professional of Tomorrow, New Requirements and Competencies. And our panelists include Deirdre Breakenridge, Chief Executive Officer at PR Communications, Geno Church, Word of Mouth Inspiration Officer at Brains of Fire, and me, Sergei Samoilenko at George Mason University. So, there is not a secret that in the age of globalization and social media, there is a demand for new type of public relation professionals that are capable of adapting to rapid organizational change and, of course, emerging online communities. And those specialists should not only be familiar with numerous social media tools, but also multitask to those new responsibilities and understand ethical choices and develop new skills. So Deirdre will address 8 new practices that explain the role of communicators in the age of social media.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me okay? Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. So it's not... Hello? Okay. It's not that I didn't think... Sorry about that. It's not that I didn't think that we were not busy enough or we needed new practices, because certainly as a public relations professional, I realize that we all have a tremendous amount to do. It was more that, as Serge said, facing the needs of a global organization, social media, crossing boundaries, and having the entire organization speaking, not just out of the communications department, and also this a new consumer, a very involved public. We see consumer preferences changing in terms of media. So what does that do for us? Well, we know there's a changing media landscape. It says that there are some new roles and responsibilities. So what I tried to do, and you can go to the next slide, I tried to crystallize some of the practices that were going on, because working with companies and speaking with other peers, hearing that, you know, the crisis that was happening because employees don't really know how to participate through social media. And where were the policies? Well, I'm a firm believer that PR practitioners have to be PR policymakers and need to be on a core team to develop social media policies. The question came up about, you know, why aren't we collaborating more? Why does the CEO ask a question and there's not one single answer? There's 20 different answers within the organization. We're not on the same page. Well, maybe it's because we're not collaborating internally. Good communication starts on the inside. That's the internal collaboration generator, where PR, along with marketing and other teams, we're learning to use social media on the inside. And of course, there's the big question, you know, are we tech testers? How much technology do we need to know? Do we have to be crisis managers or crisis doctors? So all of these new practices really came from what I was hearing from all of you and your challenges, whether it was reputation or how do we organize content now? Because it's different, and people within our companies are sharing different ways. That was the comms organizer. And how do we wrap our arms around metrics, which is so difficult? So by listening, and I, of course, use social media to do this through my own communities, whether it was PR Stud Chat, which is my Twitter community of PR students, educators, and professionals. I was hearing things on Facebook. I was going to conferences and meeting people and shaking hands. So really what was happening is these new practices came out more so because of social media. It also requires, and you can see in the center of the diagram, this PR hybrid professional. Now, I'm going to preface right now, I was as traditional could be. I was the intern, okay, who was doing the clipbooks, who had the Bacon's news books with and every time a news person would change, I'd put a new sticker over the name. So I was faxing. You know, I grew up in a world of traditional PR. I also believe you take the very best of what you know and traditional forward. It's so important. Nothing changes with our ethics and our critical thinking, and then these are all skills, knowledge, values, and sensitivity that come out of Sergei's study, which he'll discuss. But so much of this comes forward into a new world and a new approach. That's where these practices really come in. So if you go to the next slide, it's all about strategy. That is another thing that is so important to us. PR should always be at the strategy table with the CEO and the other executives. I was always in a marketing communications firm. I owned a marketing communications firm which had a PR division. What was interesting is we would all come to the table together, marketing, web, and PR, but our clients, we would almost have to force PR to be a part of it. I'm in the camp that says social media actually makes us more strategic. By having these new practices, by using collaboration and technology and this peer-to-peer like-mindedness, we can attach ourselves to other areas within our organization, not just working with our marketing brothers, but also with HR, with legal, with IR, with IT, with any group, because now our communication, even though we have our messages, everybody else is talking as well. So it's a very strategic approach. This is my strategic wheel, and basically, you'd have to read my book to fully understand it, but it says that in social media and public relations, every practice touches pieces on this strategic wheel, that they were developed to help PR professionals understand more about the process. We have a process. We have a research, discovery. We know that we need objectives and strategy and implementation and evaluation. And this is a new way that we can connect social media to our process. Some of the questions that I'm often asked, and then I will pass the microphone, usually are, why do we need to integrate? Why is that so important? And I say it's because we no longer can control the communication. We can always guide it throughout the organization. And because other groups are talking, we need to get our tentacles and to be able to be listening more and responding and working with other groups. When we do our policies, for example, we're not doing social media policies alone. Absolutely not. We need marketing, we need HR, we need legal. So we really are reaching our tentacles out to integrate. People have also asked me, Deirdre, you have these 8 new practices. It seems very overwhelming. Where do you start? I always say, and it starts in the middle of the diagram, usually with the policy maker. With all this talking that's going on, it's really important that social media policies are in place. I like the IBM model because in their model, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I'm a huge fan of what they've done. On the top level, so from the executives, they give empowerment and trust and tools to their employees. And from the, not necessarily a lower level, but the employee level, you have people who are interested, they want to participate, and they're going to use the tools. And in the middle, it's framed by a policy. And that lets an organization of over 486,000 people, so any small companies out there, or even medium or large, who say that they can't effectively use social media, take a look at IBM and what they're doing and all of their social networks and all of their idea collaboration and generation, and you can do it as well. So I would start with the PR policymaker. And with this, I'm going to hand it back to Serge.
Yes, absolutely, and actually a great point you made about educating HR people, because as an educator, I always wonder about, who puts together those, job advertising, for companies. It looks like for entry-level positions, they need somebody with a 5-year-old experience, like rocket scientists. And when I talk to my HR colleagues, well, they say, well, sometimes we don't really understand those competencies. We don't really know what PR people do, and we just use templates. But those competencies are vast, and sometimes we don't even understand that even ethics and values become one of the major competencies in this age of social media. And obviously, we need to think of ethics in the first place. So Geno Church will continue to talk about ethics, and he will tell you how he sees his role as a community manager as one of the most important inputs in public relations world.
Thank you. All right. Ready to go through this? Yeah. A little history. I'm kind of like I feel like the duck out of water a little bit, since I'm representing the kind of non-traditional marketing perspective. I work at Brains on Fire, and we're kind of a hybrid of a branding company mixed with a word-of-mouth marketing company. And I'll just give you a setup of how we came to where we are today, and that is to where we've written a book about building movements, but I will tell you that you cannot have a movement without a community. And communities itself are quite a headache for a brand or a not-for-profit, because that's real people. And real people, we're messy, which I happen to think is awesome, but a lot of brands and organizations don't. But 10 years ago, we were hired by the state of South Carolina to develop a ad campaign to curb teen smoking in our state. We're a state that produces tobacco, and 10 years ago, it used to be illegal to sell it to a minor, but it wasn't illegal for a minor to buy it. So how screwed up is that? To try to build a campaign around that. It confuses me to this day. But anyway, we decided to make a really a strategic decision to go after the RFP and not agree to do what they wanted to do, which was to do an ad campaign, but instead to develop a movement that would be led peer-to-peer. And when you talk about challenges of communication, if you're the Department of Health and Environmental Control for South Carolina, that's challenging your communication, because you're trying to say that you're going to give voice over to an organization to 13 to 18-year-olds. And so similar to what you were talking about with IBM, we had no idea what we were, I'll be honest, we had no idea what we were doing 10 years ago. We did a curriculum summit where we brought brain addiction specialists, teachers, teenagers, camp counselors, church counselors, you name it, and we centered them around the idea: could we develop a curriculum that teens could teach other teens peer-to-peer? And could that, because they buy that buy-in, and we develop a program and a policy, we could turn the voice of a movement over to 13 to 18-year-olds, and the state of South Carolina could take a deep breath and let it go. And they did. And 10 years later, it's one of the best practices for CDC. It's been written in a couple of really large books, including Tina Rosenberg's Join the Club, and it's called Rage Against the Haze. And the interesting thing happened was that by reaching out to these teenagers and giving them a voice, saying that we want to hear from you, we want to turn you into a leader, they started really being concerned about how the conversation is handled. And so it started, they policed itself, which then led us to start doing the same thing in the branding for-profit world, and took us into the world, in the messy world of community. And so I'll go a little bit just to kind of, so I'll finish up and go, but I put in because they had such awesome graphs, I had to put a graph up too. Just I had a little bit of graph envy and graphic envy. This is something that if you Google Brains on Fire, is called the cycle of the fan. And it goes to what, we are in the business of relationship building between a brand or an organization and its employees and its customers. And when you look at a cycle, someone has to come in and there's always an introduction. And this cycle is something that we use internally to make sure that we don't miss a touch point. Because there's a